Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. This is ML Miller, and I wanted to talk about Scream 5 this time around. There have been rumblings all week about the new film that's being put together. IMDb describes the film as a new installment of the Scream franchise that follows a woman returning to her hometown to try to find out who has been committing a series of vicious crimes. That's a pretty vague description, and since Neve Campbell hasn't really signed up yet for the sequel, I guess they can't really confirm if this is Sydney or not who will be returning home once the murders start happening again in Woodsboro. What we do know is that Scream 5, or whatever it will be called once it does come out, is going to be put together by the Ready or Not team, formerly and maybe still known as Radio Silence, made up of Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, Tyler Gillett, and Guy Busick, with the addition of James Vanderbilt, who is a producer and writer on his own. Anyone who saw Ready or Not knows that these guys have what it takes to deliver a fresh, frantic, and fun horror film that's not afraid to scare or bleed, but still manages to offer that kind of mainstream likability. That's basically the Scream series in a nutshell, so I think the new film is in great hands. I met Radio Silence a couple of years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, and they were a great bunch of guys. They know their horror, they know their technique, and I hear they're huge fans of the series. So I think they're going to do this one well. The big news this week was that David Arquette confirmed that he is going to be returning as Dewey, the lovable and often mortally wounded police officer. Dewey has been almost killed or fake killed more times than anyone else, I believe, in this series. And so it's great to see him coming back as Dewey. This time I'm hoping that he has maybe a harder edge, a lot of achy bones from the abuse he's taken from the past films, and sort of an attitude that says, I've seen it all. We've seen him playing the bumbling cop and the rookie in this series. I think a nice evolution of the character would be for him to take the kind of elder cop role and maybe cast someone new in the rookie cop role so that we see Dewey trying to act tough, wizened, and hard, acting as maybe a mentor to a newer, maybe even more naive cop that reminds Dewey of himself at that age. Now that Arquette has ripped off the bandage and announced that he's returning to the series, I'm sure Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell will be announcing their participation too. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Hayden Panettiere return as Kirby because her character was really popular from Scream 4. Another name that has come up this week is Matthew Lillard, who said he would love to return. I'm sure he does. I haven't really seen him in anything in quite a while, but I do think his return would get the fan base really excited. But it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to keep this return a secret so as to surprise the fans going into it. Does this mean that the main three will be the stars of the show? I don't know. I think it'd be a mistake not to have them participate in some major way in the story of Scream 5. I think nothing would tweak off the fans more than seeing the people they love to watch in the Scream series show up for an extended cameo like the cast of Ghostbusters did in the remake, or only to be bumped off or shoved to the side, which is what happened in the new Star Wars series. But can the old guard, who are all 40 and beyond, attract a younger crowd to go see the film? I think that's the tough tightrope that this film is going to be walking. I think if new characters are introduced, they'd better have a lot of personality that would be on par with those who made the first Scream so special. My prediction, though, is that one of the main three will die, maybe as an opener, like Drew Barrymore's character did in the original. And out of Courtney Cox, Neve Campbell, and David Arquette, I could see Courtney Cox's Gail as the one who bites it for more than one reason. One, Gail always represented the media, and the media is not really in the favor of the masses these days. Seeing her die while contorting a story or trying to over sensationalize something like Gale often does, I think that would give us a sense of satisfaction. The second reason that I think Gale is going to be the one that bites it is because I think that having Gale murdered in the first act would be a great inciting moment to get Sydney and Dewey back into Woodsboro and into the action. They could be dealing with her death and going through all of those issues, and this could be the thing that brings everyone back together in a way that is emotionally heavy. The last reason why I think it's going to be Gale is that Courtney Cox and David Arquette are no longer together in real life. And having her die in the opening scene would allow them to maintain that relationship in the movie without having them spend any awkward on screen time pretending that they're a couple. This is all just me fanboying, but I think there's some merit to this theory. I said a second ago that Matthew Lillard had expressed interest in coming back, and actually, Stu was probably my favorite character in the series. I just loved how sadistic he was. I loved how much into horror he was. He was basically reminded me of me and my friends, actually, growing up. So I actually sort of identified with him, up until the killing part, of course. Being the kind of self-aware horror that the Scream series is, you know they're going to involve the online community and how that influences the films. I hope the film doesn't go too hard on the critics and fans, as I think if you make them out to be too extreme or the bad guys, you're threatening to turn your fan base against you. But I still think Stu would fit the bill as an online troll who influences the killer to begin his rampage, coaxes him to up his ante, or maybe he is the killer trying to one-up his past body count. I also believe that since the directors did so well with the actress in Ready or Not, and she is a big star that is rising like a firecracker, that we could expect Samara Weaving to be cast as a major player in Scream 5. This would be awesome because I can't get enough of this bold and beautiful new actress. Anyone who's seen Mayhem or The Babysitter or her brief stint on Ash vs. the Evil Dead, Guns Akimbo, and of course Ready or Not, know that this gal gets down and dirty and still dazzles on the screen. Now, nothing is confirmed, but with the history between this actress and both the genre of horror and this filmmaking team, I think it's a sure bet she'll be showing up. Dimension Films, who had the rights to Scream, lost the rights just a short while ago, and the franchise is now owned by Lantern Entertainment and Spyglass Media Group. This means that there's a whole new team behind this one. This could be good because Scream really fizzled to a kind of a moan by the time Scream 4 came out. The decisions made so far have been really decent ones, so there's no reason to get up in arms about the regime change. Kevin Williamson is returning as an executive producer, so there'll be that kind of consistency at the very least. The plan is to film Scream 5 in the fall, barring any other pandemics or other acts of nature. It's not going to need huge CGI moments or a lot of post-production, I imagine, so I expect that this will be out by summer of next year. Maybe an August or September debut, so as not to interfere with the big release of Halloween Ends that's going to be happening in October. Now it's time for a bombshell. I was never a big fan of the Scream series. I understand why people love it, and I respect that love, but it was never my favorite series, even when it was at its height of popularity. The mask never scared me. I like the way Ghostface runs after his victims, and the use of a single weapon, that knife, forced the filmmakers to come up with creative sequences of being stalked, chased, and eventually dying at the hands of Ghostface. I really like that aspect about the Scream films too. But for me, though, the Scream series served to make fun of the slasher films of the 80s, with all of its self-referentialism. Sure, it paid homage to the slasher era of filmmaking, but it also pointed out the faults of the slasher era. By doing that, a sort of respect for that important era of horror, I think, was lost and made a punchline. Having grown up memorizing all of the Friday the 13th, the Halloweens, the Nightmare on Elm Streets, the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, I can understand the connection people who grew up in the 90s have with the Scream series. I feel the same bond with the original slasher films. But I think with all of the clever winks and nods to the camera about the slasher genre, really made kind of a dead zone of creativity that lasted through much of the 90s and into the aughts. How many times had you seen that poster where it's a killer's face and then a lineup of pretty people all lined up all in a row along the side of it? That was the standard for all horror for a good decade, and Scream was the start of all of that. Still, I'm rooting for Scream 5, or whatever it's going to be called. I want it to be good. A good Scream film means for more faith in horror at the box office. More faith in horror means more money into franchises I do care about, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, and most importantly, Friday the 13th, who all deserve great comebacks made by talented filmmakers. So even though it's not necessarily my favorite series, I'm going to be paying close attention to the story as it develops, and I probably will be talking about it a lot here on this channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe below. If you want notifications for when I post my next video, please hit that little bell down below too. Again, I'm still fiending for comments to participate in, so give me some of those down below as well. Until next time, thanks for watching.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. To live inside